Well, it's time now on the programme for a look at today's business news, and for that I am joined on set by our business editor, Brian Quinn. Brian, good morning.
Hey, Nadia.
You're going to be starting us off then with what is, of course, the big story in international trade today. Major US tariffs on imported steel and aluminium coming into effect today, despite those efforts by US allies to try and head them off.
Indeed, Canada, Mexico and the EU all firing back at the US as their exemptions from tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum expire on Friday with no reprieve from the Trump administration. All three have already announced their plans for retaliation, with the EU expected to bring the case to the World Trade Organization. The US and its allies apparently on the brink of trade war. Laurent Berstecker reports.
Hitting back at Washington, Canada said it would impose tariffs on almost $13 billion worth of US exports in retaliation to Donald Trump's latest trade restrictions.
This is the strongest trade action Canada has taken in the post-war era.
The U.S. confirmed Thursday it would impose a 25% tariff on steel imports and 10% on aluminum, scrapping any lingering hopes that longtime trade partners such as Canada, Mexico or the EU could be exempted. Mexico was quick to follow in Canada's footsteps, announcing a list of U.S. imports it would slam with its own duties.
We will be taking equivalent actions to the ones taken by the United States in terms of the impact on the flow of commerce.
Confirmation of the new tariffs also angered Trump's European allies. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker called such unilateral measures unacceptable, while Germany said the decision was damaging for both sides. French President Emmanuel Macron, meanwhile, urged the EU to file an appeal with the World Trade Organization, claiming the tariffs violated international law.
This decision goes against international trade law, to which the US, France and Europe abide to. So it's illegal, and because of that, we will file an appeal and we will find answers.
With these tariffs, Donald Trump hopes to make good on his campaign promise to protect U.S. workers from foreign competition. But many analysts now say the move, which has alienated key allies, could hurt the U.S. economy in the long run.
Well, as that report points out, countermeasures planned by America's allies could touch a wide section of the U.S. economy, with some analysts predicting job losses in America in the hundreds of thousands. The EU with a long list of U.S. industries to target. We see jewelry, bourbon, auto glass, telecom, at least $7.5 billion in U.S. exports threatened there. Canada, for its part, says it will enact dollar-for-dollar measures, so far at around $12.8 billion, with a range of products targeted, from metals to yogurt, whiskey, and coffee. Mexico targeting products from states that Trump and U.S. Republicans are trying to hold on to in upcoming midterm elections. So a lot of agricultural products there, as we see, but also metals, of course. Mexico pointing out that they are, in fact, a net importer of U.S. metals.
We are in fact the second largest market for American steel exports. Mexico has a steel commercial deficit of 2,400 million US dollars. We are the biggest consumers of American aluminium. In that sense, this will clearly impact what will be produced in the United States.
Well, investors, of course, jittery amid those fears of trade war. However, European indexes opening in positive territory Friday as the political crisis in Italy appears to be ending. We see the FTSE MIB in Milan up a full 2.4%. CAC 40 here in Paris up 0.9. The FTSE 100 in London up around 0.7%. A cautious picture on Asian markets today, with a softening yen boosting Japanese exporters. Not enough to keep the Nikkei out of the red at the close. Some positive export data out of South Korea has the Kospi up around 0.2%. Chinese indexes finishing the day in the red, however. Well, finally, for business, Amazon will soon be blocking Australians from its international e-commerce sites over a tax dispute. New rules down under mean that Australia will impose a 10% consumption tax on online retailers for all goods bought from overseas. That's expected to raise some $300 million per year, but consumer advocates fear it will reduce the range of choices for Australian shoppers. The country's treasurer says it's only fair that Amazon compete with local retailers on their rules.
I mean, it's a pretty simple proposition that Australian companies should not be put at disadvantage to large multinational companies when it comes to just selling day-to-day items to Australian customers. And what we're doing is levelling the playing field.
Well, starting July, Amazon will redirect its Australian shoppers to a local version of the site with only 60 million products instead of the 480 million available in the U.S. 480 million products on Amazon in the U.S.
Quite something. Brian Quinn, thank you very much. Brian Quinn there with our business update this hour.